What if you wanted to reject low frequencies and leave the high frequencies alone? What would you call something that passes the high frequencies as they are? That's a high-pass filter. And we won't do the math for every filter, but I do want you to see that the basic way to make a high-pass filter is to start with a low-pass filter and subtract it from the original signal. Remember that subtracting is the same as multiplying something by -1 and then adding it. Didn't that seem useless in math class? Until today! Subtracting the low-pass filtered sound means turning it upside down so that all the spectra in it are 180 degrees out of phase, so that when you add them to the original signal, those low frequencies are canceled out. What if you wanted to keep frequencies in the middle? Its name wouldn't be high or low, but just bandpass, because it passes a contiguous range of frequencies somewhere in the middle between the extremes. It doesn't have a cutoff frequency, but instead it's defined in terms of a center frequency. Besides talking about its slope or roll-off, we could talk about how wide this passband is, called its bandwidth. The bandwidth is the distance in hertz between the frequencies above and below the center frequency that are each attenuated by 3 decibels. One more parameter, but this is where the fun begins. You saw that there are different ways to make filters happen, and some of them only consider samples in the input called FIR for finite impulse response, a term you might see sometimes. And other filters include the output in its next calculation. This is feedback, and it makes for IIR filters, infinite impulse response filters. You may remember from other courses that feedback is at the heart of many processes that allow devices to sing on their own, and it's even a fundamental principle in how most acoustic musical instruments work. With the right parameters and sound input, this type of filter can resonate at its center frequency or cutoff frequency, continuing to ring on after the original sound has stopped. If you have an unpitched sound and you wish that it were pitched, this is one way to do it. In a resonant filter, its degree of resonance is the inverse of its bandwidth, or resonance increases with the steepness of the slope. Sometimes you'll see this as a control labeled resonance, and other times you'll simply see it listed as Q, standing for quality. It doesn't have a unit. That's just how it comes out in the formula. High Q values make for small bandwidth and high resonance. Just to be thorough, I'll mention that there is a fourth type of passband filter, the opposite of a bandpass filter, called the band stop or band reject filter. It aims to silence spectra at a given center frequency, but that's rather extreme, and it's usually better to use the other family of filters instead. Besides the passband family of filters, there are shelving filters. Instead of thinking like a guard at the entrance that doesn't want high frequencies or low frequencies to pass through, think of a shelving filter like a bookcase with many shelves, each with a different level of amplification or attenuation. With a high shelving filter, you define a cutoff frequency, and you can define the slope or Q factor, and then you can decide how much to boost or attenuate the spectra above the cutoff frequency. Did you catch how this naming scheme is backwards from passband filters? Passband filters are named for the frequency range that they let pass unchanged. Shelving filters are named for the frequency range that they change by amplification or attenuation. So a high shelving filter leaves low frequencies alone and will boost or cut high frequencies, and a low shelving filter will leave high frequencies alone and boost or cut low frequencies. By the way, you can have a shelf at any height, not just specific increments, so the metaphor falls apart there. Additionally, you can have something that only affects a band of frequencies in the middle, either by boosting or cutting. In audio, they get called peak-notch filters. They're shelving filters that only change one contiguous band of frequencies and either boost them, looking like a peak in the frequency response, or create a notch in the frequency response. This would usually be a better alternative to a band reject filter because we can use it with a more subtle level of attenuation. If you recall seeing an audiogram or the Fletcher-Munson curve, you might recall that our hearing is most sensitive in the range of 1 to 5 kHz. So if your composition ends up being more harsh or strident than you would like, try using a notch filter to attenuate that range.